Good evening. The regular meeting of the Richmond Board of Education will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sandy, if you could please read our mission statement, take roll.
At Richmond Community Schools, we provide a quality education that empowers students to be successful in a global community. Board Member Telto? Here. Board Member Cunningham? Here. Board Member Oldani is absent with notice. Board Member Michon? Here. Board Member Bartel? I am here. Whatever you call me. Thank you. Board Member Sutton? Here. And I'm Board Member Fortuna. I'm here and we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'm looking for a motion to approve our agenda. So, whoops.
We have to amend the agenda to add.
Oh, it's not on here? It's not on
It's here.
the, okay. I'm sorry, before we approve the agenda, we are going to be adding an action item, a letter B. It will be for the approval of a resolution to lay off a Richmond Early Learning Childhood Center employee. So, okay, thank you, Margaret.
To approve the agenda as amended.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion?
So I'm sorry, you said we're moving that to B, like boy?
15B will be an
15B.
add
15B.
item.
I'm
Got it.
sorry.
Add it.
Okay, got it.
Sorry about that. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'm looking for the approval, I'm looking for a motion for the approval of the consent agenda. So moved. Do we have a second?
Second. Go
Give
ahead,
it to Candace. Mr. Walmsley, any discussion?
There were no questions or comments brought regarding the minutes from the last meeting. In your board package, you have the personnel report with many new hires that have come in since the last board meeting. And at the next board, we will still have more that we're processing this week for new hires.
Anyone have any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is our raids, our Blue Devil raids. We'll start with Sandy.
So then just real quick, want to rave about the Welcome Back Assembly that I was able to attend this morning. Whoever did all of the setting that up to make it look awesome, organizing it and everything, just awesome job. I think that it was done very, very nicely, and I think it was well received as well. I really enjoyed myself, actually, so thank you to everybody that had any part in putting that together.
Thank you. Danielle?
Well said.
Candace?
Yes, I wanted to praise Mr. Walmsley for a second. I really enjoyed the communicator that came out in the children's envelopes. It was very well done and very informative. A lot of information in here that was amazing. I like the fact that it talks about us supplying some of the students back to school supplies. So, thank you for that.
Thank you. Margaret?
I want to second what Sandy said about the welcome back this morning. It was fabulous. Cynthia, thank you for the organization and how you get everybody where they need to be. Sandy's right, it was a great event. I'd like to rave, last week, the Richmond Education Foundation was able to make some money at the Red Barn at the Armada Fair, and several of our staff people volunteered their time to help us make some money. So I'd like to acknowledge them, Mr. Walmsley, Angela Casito, Cynthia, Barb Platts, Stacy Jovanovski, okay, Mackenzie Schulte and her fiance Evan, Barb Badalamente, and Elena Hunter. And I want to thank our board members, Deb and Danielle, for coming and helping us. And Danielle got her teenage daughter to come learn too, so thank you for that.
She enjoyed it.
I think we just really appreciate that the staff did that for the foundation. And my last thing is I want to shout out to Heidi Manguni, Mike Gibson, John Morella, Paul Knight, Brian Walmsley, and Preston Trent, who joined in. But I was part of a family that did a tour of the buildings on Friday to, they're contemplating bringing their kids to the district, so I was able to be part of the tour. Just an amazing job what our people do to represent us and welcome new families that are looking to come to Richmond schools. We're just really lucky to have these people working for us. That's it.
Thank you. Tracy?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I too want to rave about our PD this morning. I was present, and I want to acknowledge Mr. Walmsley and Cynthia and our food service, custodial staff, our tech staff, admin, everybody who was involved in this event. The speaker today, because I have joke guys, talked about having jokes or sharing a joke, and that it's a way to make people feel secure or feel safe. And that it's maybe something we should use in our classrooms and getting to know our students. So here's my joke, and I'm going to make all of you have a joke at the next meeting. Let's see.
Do you have
Hang on,
to
here we
reread
go.
the jokes then?
What?
Will you have to proofread the jokes?
Yes, you have to send me your jokes. There's a few things you, they gotta be school related. Okay, here we go. Did you hear about the school supplies that got in a fight?
No, I did not.
The scissors got a bit snippy when the pencil made an excellent point.
Nice.
Okay, I have to, I followed our speaker's advice. I Googled it. And I did not make that one up. There's a whole bunch of them, like he said, online. So anyway, I just felt that I really enjoyed the speaker. It really hit home to me. And it was like an aha moment. And I really understood it, and I understood where he was coming from. So I truly appreciated the presentation today. Okay, next item on our agenda is our students. So Joe and Elizabeth, I'm not sure who wants to go first, but it's over to you.
Yeah. So today, girls golf had a BWAC tournament and boys soccer game first on Rita this evening. Tuesday the 27th, varsity volleyball has a scrimmage at Almont. Wednesday the 28th, boys soccer has a game versus Almont. JV volleyball also is a quad at home. Lastly, JV has their first game away at St. Clair. Thursday the 29th, varsity volleyball has a game away in Dexter. Varsity football also has their very first game of the season versus St. Clair. And then lastly, Friday the 30th, cross country has a meet at 12:30 p.m. at Columbus Park.
And then just a couple reminders about Blue Devil Night tomorrow, Tuesday, August 27th, 5 to 8. Meet teachers, find classrooms, get your schedule. Along that schedule, if there's to be any issue like going over changes, you are to articulate them to Mr. Zach Osborne via email or whatever works best for him. Tuesday, September 3rd, our first day being a half day, the day afterwards being a full day. And then September 16th is Picture Day. Make sure everyone looks all fabulous. Otherwise, that's all for the students. We're just looking forward for a great year.
Any questions for our students? Thank you very much. Okay, next item on our agenda is our superintendent legislative update.
Thank you. As far as legislative update, there's no news. I guess that's good news at this point. Good news. I know that we've spoken about today was our first official day with all of our staff back. Some staff have reported back sooner, but this was the first day. And we did have a welcome back address where we not only got to acknowledge kind of the positives going on in the district and our successes, But we also got to acknowledge some of our staff members who received some milestones, 5, 10, we didn't have any 15, 20, 25, and 30 plus years of employment in the district. We have a new group of employees that have earned a parking spot at 25 years. So congratulations on them. They got their parking sign. So our custodial staff will work with them to pick their spot if they want to sit. Claim is there. So it just astonished me, and actually how time flies. Many of these individuals who I've worked closely for the last 10 years with reaching these milestones. I also want to thank the Education Foundation. They gave away the classroom grants and scholarships at today's meeting. We had 3 recipients. And also it's giving away $50 for each of the different groups to recognize that oftentimes we refer to it as a staff grant, but it's sometimes associated with just being teachers. And anybody can apply for these grants. So I'm hoping that when we get the grants in the spring, later on, that we'll have more people applying from various parts of the organization. Which goes into really what our speaker, Devin Siebold, who's a comedian. If you haven't seen him, YouTube him, Google him, do a lot. And he talked about the message and the importance of having laughter in the classroom, what laughter does to an individual, providing a safe place. It really is coupled with what we talked about last year with Jerry Brooks, and just building that environment of trust and safety. So after it, I had the pleasure of visiting all of our buildings to see the professional development. In all my years, I think this is the best year that we started out there. The staff and each of the PDs was really dedicated and focused and was looking forward to a very positive start to the school year. So, to echo what our rep said, next Tuesday is our first day for K-12 students, and Wednesday is the first day for our preschool program. It is a half day of school.
Who was it, Brian, that got the 25-year? I was able to attend this morning. Who received the 25-year argument?
Oh, you're putting on the file. Say we got Mrs. Dorsey, Mrs. Monroe, Tammy Wilson,
Linda Grillo.
Linda Grillo, one of our bus drivers.
Is there 5 or 6? No, there's one.
I thought there was
I'm trying to
5,
go
but.
through. Mrs. Dorsey, Mrs. Monroe, Mrs. Grillo, Mrs. Wilson. I will get you the
Sorry, I
names.
put you on the spot.
I will get you the names.
My phone. It's exciting.
It is. And our top, Larry, our mechanic, celebrating his 33rd year in the district. Still doing a remarkable job, keeping our buses moving in a tip-top shape, passing all the inspections.
Thank you. Our next item on our agenda is our items of interest from the board. Tracy?
I just would highlight, some of you know what I do for Romeo Community Schools is to enroll new students. And one of the things that I'm sharing with families, and I am one to shout out against what happens in Lansing on a regular basis about public education, but this is a shout out that I just think needs to happen that says thank you to a good thing that's come out of Lansing. I sit with families, and the minute that I share with them that all breakfast and lunch is covered again for their children moving into another school year, the looks on parents' faces when I say that to them is pretty astounding, as there's this relief that comes to their face. They look at me and say, "Are you kidding me? Really?" I mean, there's disbelief, and I just think it's important that as much as we can share that information, as this is really good for our families, it's really good for our communities that this continues to happen, and I'm hoping it will continue to happen because it's so important on so many levels. So that's my item of interest.
Thank you. Very good point. Margaret, you're next.
I'm good.
Campus?
I can just piggyback what Tracy had said too, because coming from a couple of years of not having to pay for lunch, I think you perhaps maybe have taken it for granted a little bit until you think about it. Oh, I don't have to go grocery shopping and worry about lunches this week. So I think that even for us that maybe didn't necessarily need it, on one hand, we kind of got comfortable with not having to also, so it is a good thing. Thank you.
Danielle?
More of a housekeeping type question. For the action item this evening about the conference, like I am asking to attend, but I wanted to do some of the CBA courses as well. Do I need to give you guys those ahead of time, or I just, maybe Candace knows, because I know she did them at the conference before, or, because it says they're reimbursed by the association anyways, but I didn't know that.
The way the motion is read, any cost for the conference will be covered, so CBA is part of that.
Yeah.
And we would work with Cindy, because she's going to actually register you, so we can know which ones we have to reimburse, or try to get reimbursement from the state for.
Right.
And which one would be district expenses, so I think when you register, it's all one
Right.
fee for the conference, whether it's.
Right,
conference or
right.
CBA.
There is.
So that's where we just built in.
Okay.
Thank you. Sandy?
Nope, awesome.
And I don't have anything. Our next item on our agenda is public comments. Since the last board meeting, the board has not received any emails. There were no public comments that needed addressing from the last board meeting. So at this time, any member of the public may address the board. Please sign in and state your name. You have 3 minutes to address the board. Are there any public comments?
Hello, I'm Christina Walla. I'm a teacher at the middle school. I'm here today to discuss hats. Why do you wear a hat? When I think of the purpose of a hat, I think of keeping the sun out of my eyes, my face, during the summer. During the winter, to keep myself warm, almost always worn outside, or possibly worn as a fashion statement. Google defines a hat as a shape covering the head worn for warmth, as a fashion item, or as a part of a uniform. I like to keep this short. Hats should not be allowed in schools for many reasons. As a teacher, I have 2 reasons why I do not want students wearing hats in school. 1, it is a safety concern. Not being able to identify a student. There's enough said right there. 2nd, hats are a distraction. I'm a teacher. They're a distraction in my classroom. Distraction to other students, not being able to see the board, the presentation, paying attention. Hats do not need to be worn in school. Hats should not be worn in school. I'm asking you board members to vote no on action item A, please. I'd also like to ask, when things are being changed to the student handbook, is there any way for staff members who spend their whole day with students, can they be surveyed on how they feel about these changes? Also, when I watch board meetings, it's really hard to hear some of you. If we could remember to click the button for our microphone to turn on, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, no other public comments. We're going to move on. Our next is our presentation on the Board of Education training on superintendent evaluation. Not sure who I'm turning it over to.
I can start, I guess. We'll just kind of have a conversation about it, but, the tool, Margaret and Candace and I attended the training for the superintendent evaluation. And the tool is the same tool that we have been using. It's even the same, I'm sorry, it's small print, so I gotta take my glasses off to do this. It's even the same 6 categories. They did try to, like before, list like what would be considered, and it's hard because there is a change, instead of the 4 different things, possibilities, now there are 3. And those 3 I do have here, I think are, well, I'm sorry, I passed it up. I wasn't really gonna talk about this part, but I kind of have to, so.
Needing support,
Yeah, hold on, I have them, I'm sorry.
page 4.
Thank you. That's why I don't have it marked, because I wasn't gonna get it.
Is it a different one?
She's looking at the phone.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
oh, yeah, no, I'm looking at this one,
Yeah,
yeah.
do you still have the last
I
meeting?
do.
The 3 that you have to report are
I'm sorry.
effective, developing,
and needing.
Thank you, I appreciate your help on
Yep.
that, I'm sorry. So instead of the 4, it's just those 3. But they did, like before, they did take, like, what would be considered, you know, needs improvement, what would be considered exemplary, all of that. And so that it's the same kind of breakdown. So it shouldn't be anything too new or too crazy, because it's the exact same tool. There's just a couple of changes being instead of, and I think they do still have the 4th one in there, but it's just not, it's not gonna be part of anything that you can use on the evaluation.
It's exemplary,
Yeah.
exemplary, what used to be highly effective.
Correct.
So, but there is no more highly effective.
Effective, right.
But you can, and I was talking to Danielle before the meeting, you can take the exemplary and you can use that in your comments, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
To me, it doesn't make any sense. Why leave it in there?
There, if you're not
You
gonna,
can't really,
it can't be the end result.
correct, but you can,
Oh,
when you're,
Ugh.
you can rate someone effective.
Yes.
But you can take the exemplary, things in the exemplary category and use them in the comment part, that while
Right.
the rating is effective, what he or she, superintendent, is exemplary in this area, and things that they do, but there's no longer. a
However,
highly
so we are
effective
There's
rating.
just the
You cannot
3.
get exempt.
Correct. That's correct. There is just the 3, but they do still break it down, like what would be, you know, like what would be the issues in like needs improvement or in,
Right.
you know, it is still
It's a
broken down that way.
Point to needing improvement here, but they're exempt.
No, no.
In the other
Needing
area.
improvement and exemplary or not.
Or the effective, and they basically said, if you are seeing something that's effective and you have something that maybe could be a little tweak on, you can, but they're exemplary in this area.
But
So
they
they
can
want you to
only-
use the term when they are
Yes.
outstanding in something.
But we can't give them an
The
exemplary.
highest you can get.
Give them this effective. That's it. Yeah, that's the highest
They
that
want
they
us
can
to
get.
use the term, but we can only give them effective.
Correct.
Okay?
I mean, yes, but it is exactly the same tool. The only difference is that, and the fact that you, instead of, and now it's only 20% of the student growth or whatever that is part of the evaluation.
It used to be 40.
It used to be 40, yes, instead of 40. So those are the only 2 changes, but the tool is all the same. Now, the other thing is, well, I'll let Margaret talk about the other thing if she wants. Because if you have like, what was it?
2 years.
2 years of being effective, then you technically only have to be evaluated every other year. But we would have, contractually, there's stuff in Brian's contract that we would have to discuss, you know, at a later time, I guess, whether or not, and you know, and with him, whether or not we would even implement that. But you still would have to do a progress report
Well, when,
every, yeah,
yeah, it's.
mid-year.
It's mid-year.
It's
Mid-year.
saying that you don't have to, when you're effective, you don't have to be evaluated every year. In the instance that we are, like Sandy said, in Brian's contract, his contract rules based on an effective evaluation. So when we do his evaluation, we are going to have some contract talk on how that works. Our conversation, the three of us, when we were in the training, and quite frankly, I think there were schools there that the whole mid-year, or we do ours quarterly. It calls in here for a mid-year meeting with the superintendent. I believe there are districts that don't do that, so that's
Another piece that's been added.
well, yeah.
Is it required? I mean, I know we're doing our.
It's required.
Okay,
It's required.
so
What
they
I'm
have to do
saying
it.
is, if we have an effective evaluation on our superintendent, you don't have to evaluate that superintendent the next year. But our thoughts and the conversation to have with Brian right now is to still have, whether we do it quarterly or we do a mid-year, because that's how we work together on knowing what Brian's, when he sets his goals or he meeting his goals, that kind of stuff. So for us, when the three of us were there, our conversation was, wouldn't you still, because I think the question was asked and they kind of didn't really answer about whether you do it or you don't do it. Because if you're not evaluating them, then this midway point thing.
Right.
Is only when you're evaluating. So our feeling was, why wouldn't you do that? That's the whole point of running the district, you're setting goals, you're still working.
But we already are doing that quarterly, like there isn't anything different that we would have to do in regards to that, I guess. I guess if we decided to do away with that, which I don't know why we would do that, but if we did, we would have to do something mid-year.
Okay.
That would be required. The way I understood it.
No, it's only required to do if you're evaluating.
The mid-year?
Yes.
So on the year, let's say we're not evaluating, then we do nothing? Are there any,
That's correct.
supposedly the goals? Does he?
Well, he would have them from his last evaluation, I guess.
Well, yeah, if you go in this year and you have an effective evaluation, based on that to set the new school year, you would set the goals. But the reality is, you can set those goals, but if this is the second year of an effective evaluation, you don't have to do anything in that middle point. That's where the three of us talked. That would be a conversation with the superintendent to continue working together as a board successfully. Would we want to do that? And I believe, Brian, tell me if I'm right or wrong, you have to agree to it. If it's not, if you're not if you get the effective evaluation and we don't have to do an evaluation on you that next year, you have to agree, correct?
Yeah, the law requires evaluations to be negotiated now. In the previous, probably since, it's been maybe 6-7 years, probably a long time, evaluations were a prohibited subject of bargaining. But when we identified the contract, we identified the instrument, the actual process and all that, it wasn't prohibited. It's not, it's negotiated. Just as we're doing with each of the groups. The teachers are in the process now, the administrators are in the process. So the only difference with my contract and the teachers is the teachers can go every 3 years, where administrators can only go 2 years without an evaluation. And the other, as you mentioned, in the past, my evaluation was the basis of any compensation changes that are outlined in the contract.
Right.
Every other contract in the district, it has nothing to do with their evaluation. It's what's been negotiated. They're going to get a step. They're getting a step regardless of their evaluation. So my only hesitation is there's no, even in my administrative team, they have a 3-year contract and it shows over 3 years they're going to make X 1 year, X, Y, and 1 year Z. Mine's the only one that doesn't define that, so that would be my only hesitation, that there's no mid-year, that second year compensation. And it doesn't have to be compensation, it's something else, but that has to be considered in that.
Correct, right, which is, like I said, I mean, that's
basically that's something. Right now, here's the evaluation tool, and we're lucky because when Tracy was on the board, with us last time, it's the same tool, because I reached out to her to make sure, so this isn't anything new that she's gonna look at. So it's just those changes. So really, our stuff that we're going to do is when we do the evaluation in November, is then to figure out what to do contractually moving forward.
Yeah, and we can choose to keep it the same, you know, I mean, and, you know, like I said, and as long as Brian agreed to that, I mean, we can continue to do it that way. We don't have to not evaluate, you know what I'm saying? Because that was something that we did bring up too, is like, well, how do you do compensation and all of that, you know what I mean? Would have to be all talked about, obviously.
Brian sent we talked about this because of the contract. So we have a letter or email already going out to our district attorney to give us some recommendations or how this would work, so that on that off year, what can we discuss or should we discuss and things like that, so that when we're ready to do that discussion, we'll have some.
Which I assume we would just do during the evaluation in November at that time. Would we discuss it at that time?
It would be a separate contractual conversation.
Right.
Where, if you recall before, you had the conversation because your evaluation required you to talk compensation based on the evaluation. The law doesn't require it. So now it's basically two separate entities. So my recommendation to the board is have the attorney provide you a letter, attorney-client letter with your options, talk about it and figure out as a board what you're comfortable with. Because, you know, like I won the lottery and I'm on the beach in Hawaii tomorrow, and you're going to replace me. I use that often in this district, but it's the law, it's whatever you're establishing is going to set the precedent going forward. So it's important that the board is solid in what they want from the organization.
Let's understand.
Yeah, the only other thing that they really did kind of drive home is that it's a consensus, which, I mean, it is anyways, but they just really did drive that home when we were there, that, like, it's so, like, you know, when we're in there and we're doing an evaluation, it's a consensus. Consensus means we're all together, it's one thing, it's not, you know, each individual, I mean, we each have to say, obviously, in the evaluation, but, you know, in the vote and all that, it's a consensus, yeah. They really did.
The tool itself, when you are finished with it, that you vote on is a consensus document. You have reached a consensus that this is what you are rating your superintendent, and that's what you're voting on. What the consensus came in the evaluation process.
Right. I know we did.
We have.
We've been doing it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I know that we're on that page.
I mean, that's all, I think that's it, I think that was it.
Well, we also talked about the training. Everyone has to have proper training. If you don't have the proper training,
So that's what you're
after the
saying,
fact, right.
Right.
After the fact, you may not be taken for a vote if you don't have the proper training.
Right, so I
Your vote
guess,
may not count if you don't take the time. Every person has to take the time to get proper training.
there was a training, and I think there may have even been a deadline, but I don't remember the deadline, to be honest with you. I don't remember them saying that you wouldn't be able to get a vote, but.
We could, I thought I read that in the paperwork, we could make that decision.
Oh, we could make it as a
Yes.
board to say we're not
They
counting
did
it because
not.
you didn't do the training.
Right.
I mean,
We've trained though everybody. I went and did the actual training for the ISD, so I know, I don't know who I did.
Here's the reality. We've all been trained on this Macomb County tool, including
Right.
Tracy when she was on the board before. Now, the three of us went for the additional stuff, which takes off the highly effective, takes off the 40%, makes it 20% if you're evaluated 2 years. So our job was to come back, have this discussion, this is the.
they said this could be considered the training.
This is the training.
Yeah.
So if there are questions, and for us, the reason that it works is because we've already been using this tool. There are some districts that have not, or new people, you know, they've got lots of new people, that kind of thing. We've done our training.
So you may want to get, I guess, with Kelly,
I will
just to go
check with
over the
Kelly.
new stuff.
Yep.
But if she's been attending the legislative meetings, which I think that she's our person to do that, right? Then she probably already knows, but I don't know, Captain.
I will double check with her and make sure that she is aware. Okay, perfect. Okay. Anybody else, any questions, any comments?
Just this language just lines up with teacher evaluation. I mean, it always has to do that at notebook. Correct. Administrative, teacher, everybody in the district language, right?
The only difference is in the administrator and what's pending for approval with the teachers is highly effective was given a 4, effective was given a 3, and so forth. And what we've done is we've taken, if you were highly effective or effective in your range, you're going to be given effective to the state. So when you do the calculation page, I could have, as a teacher, I could have, in Danielson it's called distinguished, but it's highly effective. I could have distinguished categories, and the way we weight that is it's a 4. You look at the calculation. The way the superintendent's is regardless of whether you're effective or highly effective or exemplary, I can't remember how it's just a 3. So it's the other groups are weighted differently than this one, but it's still. And the last thing, Ken, I think I didn't hear that part of the law, but I think where it comes into play is if someone is given needs improvement or developing, which are the 2 lowest categories, whether it's a teacher, administrator, or myself, the law allows kind of an appeal.
Yes, there's an appeal process.
And where that comes in is people aren't trained, that plays into the appeal process. So for our administrative team, they've all been trained on the administrative and the teacher eval. They were trained the week of August 5th. So they're all set, ready to go for our teachers this year. The administrative team in central office is getting the training for the administrators. So I think that's where if someone's not trained, that can cause issues in the final eval that someone's giving input. And training is very broad. There's no definition of what training is. This could be, this is considered training. Here's the instrument, here's the categories, let me know if you have any questions. There's no definition of training.
And the teacher's percentage of their base of their growth has lowered also, is that correct?
Yes, and again, I don't want to go wholly, I got to go through their process for their union to approve it. But theirs is also 20%, and the domains that we use in Charlotte Danielson have been increased to 80% of the evaluation. So their student data is 20%.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, next item on our agenda is our action items. Number A, or letter A, I'm looking for a motion for the approval of the 24-25 Student Parent Code of Conduct.
I motion, go ahead.
I move to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the 2024-25 preschool parent handbook. No,
For student parent.
no, all right. Sorry. I move to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the 2024-2025 Student Parent Code of Conduct Handbook as presented on August 12, 2024, and outlined in the attached documentation.
Support. Thank you. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to, the comment with respect to this, voting on this, the changes that are made, the HAT policy is not a change that's being made tonight. The HAT policy was made last year. We had several meetings, several discussions with, and heard from administrators and teachers along the way. So all this is just an update on things. There's no change to that rule from last year.
I'm just trying to remember in memory, but does it not say in there that if it is a distraction or perhaps a distraction or a safety piece that the teacher can ask them to remove it?
There's a statement about being able to see the student's face without that with recognition, and that if they're could be certain situations, in a chemistry class where they don't keep all the extra stuff on, loose clothing and all that. We ask kids to take this up for safety.
So, a comment I had, because when Ms. Waller brought it up, I pulled it up, like we were talking about how it talks about if they can't see the face or it's at the discretion of the administration or whatever. It may be a good thing to put on our radar since it's not a change from last year, so even if we approve this, it's not changing anything, but maybe to put on the radar for the next revision, because the way I was reading it, it is kind of confusing. In one paragraph, it says, while fashion may change, the reason for being in school does not, blah, blah, blah. Unless it disrupts the educational environment or prevents a safety risk, it will not be permitted. But then a couple of bullet points later, it says that dress may not cover the student's face to the extent that the student is not identifiable, and specifically says except for religious or medical purpose, which is completely understandable. But then I don't know why it specifically says hats may be worn as long as the student's face is visible. But I don't feel like with a baseball type hat, the student's face is visible. I understand the idea of it being a safety risk at that point, which then contradicts the paragraph, a couple paragraphs up, because it is a safety issue. At least if there's no hat on the student, you could at least identify what color hair they had. If you're looking at the back of their head when they have a hat on, you can't see even a color of a hair to attempt to determine male. Maybe you could tell by walking male or female, but then you're making assumptions. And so then that does become a safety risk. So maybe that's something to flag for next year, I don't know, because we can't do anything about it now.
Well, and first and foremost, it would be good if we had all three buildings follow the policy first, and then let's see if there were issues. Because I agree, if you want to look at if there was a problem, but all three buildings have to follow it first, and then tell me that it doesn't work.
And I thought we were going to get feedback back as far as how the dress code went.
But you can't have feedback if everybody didn't follow the policy. So maybe feedback when everybody follows it. Because I agree, if something's not working, that's the whole point of every year bringing the handbooks back, looking at different things, what's happened and that. But until everybody follows it, you can't have feedback.
Well, then that goes back to like Danielle said, let's put it on our radar. Let's get some feedback from our staff. Come, I don't know, April, May.
Maybe the administrators can put it on their radar to listen out for what the
Let us
teachers are
know.
talking within the building.
I'll just say, you know me, I'm all about safety. I'm all about, but we contradict ourselves when we tell people you can't wear hats because it's a safety concern. But next Friday, wear your crazy hat day. So if we're going to do it, then we got to go with some crazy other thing. Crazy socks, crazy shirt. You can't be inconsistent and claim that it's a safety hazard. I can tell you, a person who's going to do something or someone who's going to is not waiting for crazy hat day because they can be hidden. So I have no problem, and we have looked at discipline reports. We've been reported here multiple times. We have significantly reduced the discipline referrals and high. We had the administrative team, the dean up here with Mrs. Staples several months ago, and we constantly look at those discipline referrals. So if this becomes a disruption, an issue, obviously we're going to relook at the issue. Consistency is what we're trying now. I say consistent because it's sometimes challenging from a kindergartner to a 12th grader. But in the broad spectrum, we have to have consistency in the building in order to see if something working or not.
Absolutely. Okay, I just have a question, Brian, when you talked about the AP classes and allowing them to test out. I know that it's still the same in there,
Yes.
that they are allowed to test out. I was just curious about the response from
There are two questions, the AP and then the insurance, they do not have an answer for. Based on the policy, once the policy means the AP, they do not have an answer.
Any other discussion or any other questions?
When you say test out, do you mean not take
I'm sorry,
a
not test out.
test? Okay.
I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The
Retake.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
I stated at our last meeting that you were there, I believe,
Mhm.
but I didn't think we should be allowing retakes for
Yeah.
AP classes.
Because colleges.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, that might be different out there, I don't know, I haven't been in a college classroom, so. Again, if we find, I guess it's an issue or something, we can always revisit it. so. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next action item is our preschool parent. I'm looking for a motion for our preschool parent handbook.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the 2024-25 preschool parent handbook as presented on the August 12, 2024 meeting and outlined in the attached documentation.
Do I have support?
Support.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'm looking for a motion for the approval of the 24-25 child care parent handbook.
I move to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the 2024-2025 child care parent handbook as presented on August 12, 2024, and outlined in the attached documentation.
Do I have support? Second. Tracy? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'm looking for a motion for the approval of the 24-25 student athletic code of conduct handbook.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the 2024-25 student athlete code of conduct handbook as presented on August 12, 2024, and outlined in the attached documentation.
Support.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I am looking for a motion for the approval of board policies.
I move to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the attached board policies as presented on August 12, 2024, and outlined on the attached documentation.
Do I have support? Second. Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, I do. I've prepared myself here with a little bit of a note because going off the cuff doesn't always work for me. So I just want to say that although I agree with the majority of these policies, I do have one major hang-up on the language in policy number 5106 regarding the transgender rights. To be clear, I definitely think that we need a building protocol in place for when these particular situations arise. I do understand that these policies are not only for the adolescent students K through 12, but also for the staff who are adults with full functioning frontal lobes as well as high levels of cognitive function. In a perfect world, I would like to see separate policies for employees than for students when it comes to the transgender 5106. I can understand keeping staff protected from other staff that may be bullying each other and possibly even bullying the children. But when it comes to children specifically, it is scientifically known that there is a natural age where the adolescent mind is still figuring things out. And to me, this particular situation does not need its own policy in the bylaws. There are so many other situations we could create our own policies for other than the transgender. We could be here all night with that. Also, in addition to that, specifically on the pronouns, I would also like to say that the pressure being put on the children as to which pronouns to use is unnecessary. When we try to teach our children to address people as Miss, Mr., and now you're saying to them they could be wrong just by looking at them and making that decision, you are confusing them. For instance, when I walked into this room tonight, I even said to everybody, "Hi guys." Nowhere in my mind was I thinking that you were all guys. It's just me, it's my personality, it's who I am. So for me, I feel that it's a it's my language that I use, and if it is offensive, then I'm sorry, but it's still who I am. So to put the pressure on the children and make them think that they might get in trouble if somebody is sensitive to something like that is just, I just think that there's a certain age of children that it's not something that they should be worrying about. And also, I don't feel that the staff should have to worry about disciplining children for that either. And I do feel that maybe some of the language, like, for instance, the locker room, how we put in the student handbook about how to dress or change and be more conservative with that part. Perhaps we can put that language into the bylaw. That would maybe help on some things also, instead of just the handbook, but in as the policy. And then also in another part of the policy, I think that it states that advising or inputting for the parents, it's not very clear that the parents would be notified. Some of the language kind of suggests if need be, or if it results to that instead. And I understand that our protocol within the building is to obviously get the parents involved. I get that, I understand that. I have full faith in the protocols that we have in our buildings. My point here is I just don't feel that this needs to be a policy in our bylaws. I just think that it's a little overkill, and I would hope that the generic bylaws that cover bullying and such should be enough. There's a whole bunch of other situations that we could create an entire bylaw for, or a policy for. And so that's my feelings on 5106.
Thank you. I would just like to add a piece to Candace to what you said. I don't believe anywhere in our board policies it states that we require our students to use the correct pronouns, that we discipline them if they don't. I did not read anything. I do not, as far as I'm aware, and if I'm wrong, please let me know, I missed it. But our teachers aren't required to discipline our students. That is nowhere in it. It only says that our staff will attempt to make an honest attempt to try to use the correct pronouns. The other question I had for Mr. Walmsley, are we required under the new Title IX requirements to have the transgender piece in our policies? Do you know?
The training that we just went through, was talking about the process and so forth. It is recommended by the attorney. I don't know if it is actually a requirement to actually have it. And as this board member Cunningham and I had talked, our home got cut off last week again. We talked extensively. Policies govern the way we operate in the district. And when we have situations that are in our district, we need to provide guidance to our team, whether it's administrators, teachers, whoever, on how we're going to operate. In this particular one that was referenced, we basically took our practice and put it in a policy so that, because we were already doing it, and in terms of a plan, we get to a point with the student where the student is comfortable enough, and we use our social workers to help our student, because we want the parents involved. If I have a student that is absolutely adamant, we're going to continue working with that student to get them to a safe place. But we also have situations where we have students that do not feel safe. And I do not want to ever jeopardize a student well-being, life, and put them in a situation. We have been successful to this date with every transgender student we've had in the district. And I'll be honest with you, there's probably many that are here, and I use this example, that Nobody knows. We have students that do not talk. We come up with a plan and a situation with the teacher and the students, and how are they going to function in school? Because they are afraid of what would happen to them. So when I look at this, it recognizes that this is a population that exists in Richmond and that we need to do everything we can to make sure they feel safe. Just as we would if we have someone who's got a racial background that's different from the norm here, or an ethnic background that's different from the norm. Are we perfect? No. We're humans. But I think our student body is very accepting of kids with different backgrounds and diversity. Are we perfect? No, we have situations. So I guess my position is this population exists in Richmond, and we have an obligation to make sure everybody feels safe here. And this is a way of helping that population. It's not for me to pass judgment. It's not for me to say whether I agree or don't agree. That's not my job. My job is you walk through the door. It's my job to educate you, provide you a safe environment. And I think that's where some of our conversation when we talked the other day was putting our personal beliefs at the door. We say to our teachers all the time, no student should ever know how you vote. Because if they do, you're not doing your job as a teacher. Because it's our job to present both sides of the situation. It's the same thing here. It's no student should ever feel so-and-so doesn't like me because of my race, ethnicity, belief, lifestyle, whatever it is. We should be accepting all students. I've been very proud of the way we've handled it. We've done it with integrity and discretion when needed to be. All of them have involved the parents at some part of the process. And so there's no parent, my members, I could have forgotten one, there's no parent that doesn't know in our district. But it got to a point where the student felt safe enough to have that conversation with the parent. And we do have students that do not feel safe bringing up topics at home. And we use our trained expert, guidance counselors, social workers, helping that student get to that safe place.
I guess just to add to Candace's a little bit, why in the section in our policy where it talks about harassment and things like that, it mentions all of these classes. Why do we have to have a separate policy or a separate page or whatever for strictly trans? We don't have a separate one in there for African American students, or a separate one in there for, I don't know, ADHD or other things. So I guess I wonder why. For me, I just question, we talked today a little bit, and I just question why do we have that when we don't have those separate policy for just those students?
That was my next question as well. That's where I was going to go with Brett.
Because the discipline one does mention it, or race, creed, it talks about gender, the whole thing is in there. And to me, my attitude is I don't care what a student has or the issue, but we should be treating them all the same. We should be making sure that all of our students are not bullying and not, that we're working with all of them to make sure they feel safe and are welcome here in our district.
Right, so for me, our professionals that we pay, our attorneys, are suggesting that we put this language into our policy so that we are prepared for a situation, and so that our staff is prepared and knowing how to handle this particular situation.
So we have protocols already within the building, as Mr. Wamsley is saying, that they've been following for years that have been working. I'm not second guessing that.
Yeah, down to writing
Turn it into
as
policy.
our,
And in 5106. 5106 is the policy that I think specifically.
It is specific for.
Yeah, for
Mhm.
just.
It
And
is.
and again, I wish that we could separate this 5106 and have the adult version versus the children's version.
So
Because
no one
the
is
adult
forcing-
version, this for sure would be a reason to call out bullying and discrimination if an adult is treating a coworker like this. this, or if a teacher is treating a child on this, I agree with that. But when you're talking adolescents and the little minds, they shouldn't be held to this level of standard as a 7, 8-year-old. And remember this type of stuff. If they get scolded
They shouldn't be
once.
held to a standard to treat people equally and fairly? That's my problem.
So the pronoun specific.
No. You just said that young children shouldn't be held to the, I can't even
They
believe
shouldn't
that you
be
would say
held
that out
to
loud.
calling somebody by their proper, my 5-year-old shouldn't have to remember that their friend said, I don't want to be called Susie, I want to be called Suzanne.
Do you understand what this is? Your 5-year-old doesn't have to remember to do it, and they're not going to get in trouble for not remembering to say they instead of her, whatever. You're missing the whole point of what this is.
Well,
The
we
whole
look
point
at
of
what's
this.
considered discrimination, harassment, and bullying, that is part of it.
It is not known for the students. Candace, can you point out the policy, because I did not see it where it directly said our students can be disciplined.
I'll just to clarify, when we're talking discipline, we do a restorative practice and progressive discipline in this district. So if we have a student, whether they fight, or whether they call someone the wrong name, or so forth, we address it, correct it, and move on. Nobody suspended, there's no letter that goes in your file and so forth. If it's ongoing, we have a conversation, what's going on here? If it's persistent and consistent and intentional, that's when we start getting into formal discipline as outlined by the handbook. Kids and staff make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. I may call someone something that I forgot. It goes back to, did you intentionally do it to cause harm or distress to that person? And that's where our conversation needs to be discipline. But if I have a 5-year-old, and I'm not aware of this in our district, but if this runner, that transgender male, and they call him the wrong pronoun, we deal with the 5-year-old. We deal with it in the process. If I have a high school, and we look at the age, as our discipline says, you have to consider the age of the student, you have to consider the cognitive ability of the student, we look at it, do they have special ed, IEP, and so forth. So I just want to make clear, nobody is disciplined because they made a mistake.
No kids.
I guess I want to make sure that's it.
It does say here, it says unlawful discrimination, harassment, and bullying. If a district employee receives a verbal, written, or electronic report of witnesses or otherwise directly or indirectly has noticed that a student has experienced discrimination, harassment, or bullying in violation of this policy, the staff member must promptly report the alleged misconduct pursuant to the district's unlawful discrimination and harassment policies. If a student receives a verbal, written, or electronic report of witnesses or otherwise directly or indirectly has noticed there has been an incident of discrimination, harassment, or bullying in violation of this policy, the student is encouraged to promptly report such incident pursuant to the district's unlawful discrimination and harassment policies.
So the difference
In
is,
violation of this policy must be handled pursuant to the district's unlawful discrimination and harassment policy. So even just to accuse a small child of something like this, if they hear about it.
what it says is if a student
It's getting
sees it,
harassed.
whatever you want to talk about, harass, bully, whatever, a student sees it, it encourages them to report it. If I'm a staff person and I see it and I turn a blind eye, we as a district are liable.
Yes.
And we said it for the last 3 years, and the staff is going to hear it again Thursday. You are an employee of this district. If you know of a situation, sexual assault, anything, you have an obligation to report it. If not, the district, if it goes to a lawsuit, can be financially held harmed because a staff member didn't report it. That's where we might have to discipline staff if they knowingly knew it and didn't do anything. It'd be like if I know a student comes in with a black eye and I don't call protective services, you're in trouble because it's a law you have to do that. What this is saying is if the staff member knows that Johnny is being tormented or harassed, whatever word you want to use, by other students, and you don't do anything, you're encouraging that. And it's a failure on the employee's part. That's what that's saying. It says that their students are encouraged, and we do encourage it. We hear it all the time. If you ask any principal and teacher, so-and-so doesn't like me, they're mean to me. I mean, they're reporting this stuff out. And then once we know it, we have an obligation to look into it. And that's where if Joe tells Mrs. Borwick, so-and-so is going on, and Mrs. Borwick doesn't do anything, Mrs. Borwick has failed the system by not investigating the situation.
And wouldn't that be in one of our other bylaws for protecting, harassing? I mean, what, this
It's
is
not bylaws, it's
specific
policy.
This is specific to transgender students, this whole policy, or policy is.
No,
So-
so let's read the top of the very first page, does it not, of this one that you're looking at right now, does it not, or what are the definitions? I know it has the definition page where it says blah, 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 specifically what that,
This whole policy is specific to transgender
no,
students.
it's not, no.
I will tell you, the
It's what number
transgender
is it?
policy is the guidelines of what we have. 5106 is following the guidelines that we have to follow per OCR. I know there are
Right there, the
policies
board
out there.
recognizes that transgender students, it's the first.
That policy is, but if you go back and
That's what I'm talking about.
if you go back and you look at the, I think it's 31 something or another, that one definitely gives everything that you read about what to do in actions and stuff is in that policy, and that pertains to everybody, no matter if it's trans, if it's racial, if it's whatever. Sure, that, yeah.
But then the confusion becomes, why is it only for this issue?
Well,
Is that
that's-
correct?
Yes.
Well,
That's-
because that's the guidance we've gotten from
From our
OCR
attorneys.
and the attorney, is
It's
this
that
guidance.
Okay.
I said at the last board meeting, there is a lawsuit that we have been named in, we did not part of it. It is out of Kansas, it doesn't even follow our jurisdiction that oversees. So until this is changed at a Supreme Court level, if it ever is, this is what our district, or our federal district has to follow. We are not part of Kansas, but we are named in it. So if we get a civil rights complaint, I think they said this at the last time, because we're named, they're going to wait to see what the court rules.
Yeah, this is, and that's why,
That's why we
obviously why
have it.
our attorney wants us to have it in there, is to protect us from those, from lawsuits. I mean, that's why they want us to put it in there.
Yes.
And maybe at this point, we put it in there because,
To
yes,
protect
I
the
agree, to protect ourselves. However, we may watch down the road, and depending on what happens, with
We
any
go through
lawsuits
these
or
every,
whatever,
we
it
go
could
through
be
these every
removed.
year. Yeah,
Could be removed,
correct.
so.
And our personal feelings sometimes just have to go by the wayside.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
it's personal.
Yeah, well,
So if you
clearly
don't-
it is too, for you and
No, it's not.
everybody else.
It's not personal to me.
This, this is
It's
specific.
fairness. All I'm saying is,
All of this
it's
is already in there.
It's all about what your personal feelings are towards transgender.
Absolutely
Yes, it is.
not.
And we've listened to it, we've listened to
Okay.
it for a year.
Ladies.
Oh my God,
Don't.
you can't just at least admit it out loud.
Are you
At least,
kidding me
no, I'm
right now?
not.
Ladies.
Admit it out loud.
Ladies, no.
I am not against the protocol that we have in place in the building. I
Okay.
am for it.
Okay.
To create it in a policy, that is political. That is political.
But that is how you get procedures at the building. You have to have one, you have to have policy that then speaks to what happens in the buildings. And that's just making that right? This is just makes that right. So if you're okay with the protocol that happens in the building related to transgender students, then the policy has to feed that. And that's what this
that
is.
building protocol also goes for other things that are within, not just specific to this, but other ADHD, the protocol of addressing and assessing and all of that. This
Why do you
is-
have a problem with it then now? If you're saying this is already all covered in another policy that you're fine with, then why do you have a problem with this one particularly because it calls out transgenders?
Because it talks about restroom access, it talks about a bunch of other things.
Okay, so it has other things in it other than the policy that you keep referring to.
Policy. I'm against the whole policy.
Okay. Any other comments, any other discussion on any part of our policies?
Brian, can you just, if you're talking to district lawyers in reference to the expansion of Title IX, can you just get clarification as to the Elliott-Larsen Act, Michigan's Elliott-Larsen Act from the 1970s, which was just updated in 2020 and 2023, I believe, to have expansive language. I know that federal law surpasses state law. But I also know that if people are discriminated against in school situations, that you can contact the Michigan Civil Rights Office in relationship to the Elliott-Larsen Act. So how do we, if this lawsuit does potentially affect the language that we can have in policy, how does the Elliott-Larsen Act help us keep the language that expands protection? And I guess I would just maybe like their input on that if we ever come to that point.
Well, I can tell you from our administrative training with true law, if the Supreme Court tomorrow threw everything out, we're still obligated to follow this under the Michigan law.
Right.
So just because it goes out of the federal, Michigan has adopted this, and it's our responsibility.
Right, we have to follow it. Correct.
So a lot of the reference, especially the Elliott-Larsen sections in there, reference those changes to the law.
Specific to staff, your employees.
Specific to discrimination of any area.
Correct, so if I have
So if we use the Elliott-Larsen Act as the guidance for the employees, in that language,
it's not just employees, it's also students. If there's a student who feels discriminated under the Elliott-Larsen Act, that we have an obligation to look into it and correct it or address it. And I don't quote me, but it's race, gender, gender identity. It's just as expansive as what we're doing here. It's not limited to just race and ethnicity.
Correct.
Which is why you have policies on staff who are nursing. We cannot discriminate against a staff member who is nursing, so that's why there's a policy. And that's included in the state. We have staff or students. I have a student who's pregnant and comes back to school and has to nurse a baby. I have to provide an opportunity for them to nurse the baby.
Any other comments or on any of our policies that we're going to approve tonight? Okay. Is this a roll call vote? It says roll call vote on here on my copy. It says roll call vote. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
aye.
Motion carries. Okay, looking for a motion for the approval of board members to attend the Michigan School Board Association Conference.
I move to approve the registration, lodging, meals, and mileage for board members Cunningham, Fortuna, Bashan, and Sutton to attend the Michigan School Board Association Conference on October 24th to the 27th, 2024 at the Lansing Center in Lansing, Michigan, as outlined in the attached documentation.
Do I have support? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Looking for a motion at this time to go into closed session.
Pursuant to Section 8K of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the purposes of school safety.
Do I have support?
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're ready to go back into open session at 8:51.
We have 2 action items. I need a motion for the approval of the district emergency operations plan.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the district emergency operation plan.
Support. Thank you. Any discussion?
I'll just remind everyone, this plan is not subject to FOIA.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'm looking for a motion for the approval of a resolution to lay off a Richmond Early Learning Childhood Center employee.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the attached resolution to lay off a Richmond Early Learning Childhood Center employee.
Do I have support?
Support.
Any discussion?
I'll just reiterate to the board, with the new collective bargaining agreement that took effect August 12th, we have to follow that agreement. It requires a 30-day notice. Based on the enrollment at this point, we do not need one of our teacher assistants. The individual was offered an open position, declined the position, and asked to take layoff. So we have since filled the open position with someone for full staff. So that's the process.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Being no further business, the board will adjourn at 8:53.